Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis. No Ari Wasserman on this one. We miss him already. If you guys want to see what we talked about with roster building on the last KOTN, Ari Wasserman, our great friend of The Athletic, joined us. Then this one, Landis, we needed to do this. This is an educational operation for anybody who cares about college football. We are predicting the 12-team playoff for next season. I think we'll do this 6 to 8 times before the season starts.
Yeah.
At different tent poles as things happen. We're hitting this here because the NFL declarations have been made, but there's still offseason stuff that could happen before spring football that will affect us. But portal things will affect us. How teams look in spring football will affect us. All those different kind of things. There's still coaching changes that could be made that might affect us. So we know, but you have to go through the exercise. And I did see somebody the other day, Landis, gave like a preseason top 10 or something. Useless. Preseason, whatever, top 10, all that matters is the bracket. Who's your bracket? Who are your 12? Who are the 4 power conference teams that are going to get automatic bids as conference champs? Who is your other 5th conference team that's going to get in and probably be the 12th seed? And then who are your 7 at large? And by the way, with our predictions, we are operating under the assumption that what was going to be 6 automatic bids for conference champs before the Pac-12 exploded, that's going to change. It has not officially changed. They've talked about it. They've recommended it. They are going to get to a point where it's going to be 5 automatic bids and 7 at large, because there's no way in heck, Landis, that the powers that be are going to say, yeah, the Mountain West and the American champs automatically get in. It's never going to happen. It was 6 automatic bids before because there were 5 power conferences. Now that the Pac-12 is dead, there's only 4 power conferences. The whole thing is, we'll give you 1. We'll give the little guys 1, just so people get that straight.
I think they should keep it at 2, just to punish themselves for their stupidity and, blowing up the sport. Also, who's to say that, a second G5 team wouldn't be more deserving than a 7th Power 5 team? Yes, for real.
Wait. When you see the list of teams that are not in our brackets, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to get a lot. One of the things that happened to me is man, I think maybe they should each get 8. Do we need to expand to a 20-team play? It is.
Really? I was the opposite. I was I don't. I guess I'll put a Power 5 team in here. I'm not totally convinced they're a playoff team. Yeah.
So a couple things happened to me. There's going to be a very quick dispute about should the top 4 seeds who get the buys be the conference champs, because you already felt like a crazy person. We have our graphics ready, and you guys put mine up, and you were like, oh my God, those are your top 4 seeds. That is awful. And you know who's going to think the same thing? The commissioners of the SEC and the Big Ten. So the auto bid thing, you have to live through it. You have to do it yourself to understand it. So that's going to be educational. I think it's possible there are 2 Big Ten teams that are going to wind up playing 3 times in 2024. So strap in for that, for a trio of games. And this is not our quarterback show. I want to fairly quickly do a Northern quarterback show and probably rank the quarterback situations for all of our Northern teams. This is not that. But when you're trying to predict who's going to make the playoff in January, who your quarterback is going to be is a very easy and quick shorthand to do it. And I did who's back, which teams have their quarterback back, which teams have an experienced starting quarterback coming in the transfer portal, and then who's playing somebody new. And I got to tell you, brother, if you're playing somebody totally new at quarterback, I don't know about you making the playoff the way the world works these days.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I can get around that idea. I think there are a lot of teams playing somebody new, and that will continue to be the case. And that number will probably keep going up every year. So I don't know if I believe that will be the way of the world moving forward. But it's an easier process now if you put most of your stock in returning quarterback, obviously returning head coach, and then dabble a little bit perhaps in other returning production and schedule too. I looked at schedule a little bit with this.
Schedule's important. I'll throw this number out here now. By my count, doing my best guess in mid-January. By the way, 68 power conference teams now. We've got to get our heads around that, because you lost Oregon State and Washington State, as power conference teams, but you added SMU. So last year it was 69. Now it's down to 67, but then SMU brings it back up to 68. So the power 68. I have 51 of the 68 with either a returning quarterback themselves or with a transfer quarterback coming in to probably win the job who has pretty major starting experience somewhere else. That's 75% of the teams in the Power 5. So there's not a ton. So you and I each have a couple teams in our playoff who are playing new young guys, but it is a factor for me in January as I think about it. And there's one team in particular that is not in my bracket, and that's one of the main reasons. Because I'm not sure who their quarterback's going to be.
Well, we can talk about the team when we get to it.
I know that's the tease. So we want to talk about this though first. We're not doing the frantic 14. That's where we do. The idea is that we do 7 topics, 2 minutes each, and 14 minutes, and it's always 28 minutes. It's always.
I think the last frantic was like 37 minutes. Yeah.
So first of all, I need a better adjective. Nothing about me is frantic. Bloated. But bloated is not a great word to get people to listen. The bloated 14. So we have 2 topics, and the first, before we get to our playoff brackets, and then we're going to do our playoff brackets, and I'm going to tell you, as a college football fan, what I need you to do. You listener, viewer, I have something that I need you to do. I'm going to write it down, because sometimes I tease things and I forget to do it. But first, we're going to do this. Alabama is stealing 2019 Indiana. 2019 Indiana, Tom Allen. We have to have Tom Allen on. Tom Allen was the head coach of 2019 Indiana. He's not a defensive coordinator at Penn State, which is a great job. And I think Tom Allen might make the playoff this year. But 2019 Indiana had Michael Penix at quarterback, had Kalen DeBoer, the Washington coach, who's now the Alabama coach, as the offensive coordinator, and Kane Womack, who just got hired as the new Alabama defensive coordinator because Kalen DeBoer stole him away as the South Alabama head coach. He's now the defensive coordinator at Alabama. So the guys who were running the offense and the defense for Indiana in 2019 are now running it for Alabama in 2024. You're welcome. You're welcome, Tuscaloosa. Send Bloomington a fruitcake.
It's pretty crazy. Like, I remember at the time, like when Indiana was working with that staff, that I think everyone was pretty high on the prospects for like Kalen DeBoer and Kane Womack and what they were going to become, and everyone believed they were going to be head coaches, and they became head coaches in short order. I don't think anybody thought it would get to this place 4 years later, where they are now running Alabama. And I actually had forgotten this and was reminded of it when I was going back earlier and looking at Alabama staff. The first domino in all this was actually Nick Saban stealing Indiana's strength and conditioning coach.
What?
In 2019. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
David Ballou, who is an Indiana grad, who had been in a couple of different places and then went back to Indiana for that season, maybe the season before that, was hired at Alabama in 2021 as the head strength coach and has been in that position since then. And now Kalen DeBoer is keeping him there. So not only do they have the 2 coordinators from 2019 Indiana, they also have the strength and conditioning coach. The only thing they're missing is Tom Allen. Poor guy. He should just go there and like be the defensive backs coach.
I know.
Yeah.
They should build a rock. Can they build a rock in Tuscaloosa? They have a rock at Indiana. Don't they have a rock there?
They do have a rock. Yes.
Yeah. Get a rock. Now you need a rock. We know what we should do? We'll send them a rock.
That's nice. Yeah.
Congratulations on stealing the entire staff and mojo of a mediocre Northern team. Here's a rock. Go Roll Tide.
That's right. Roll Tide. How do you think Kevin Wilson feels about all this?
Kevin Wilson, Tulsa coach, former Ohio State offensive coordinator, who was the head coach at Indiana before some stuff happened and he lost his job, and then Tom Allen took over. Kevin Wilson's like, hey, I'm not that attached to Tulsa.
Yeah, he will. Kevin Wilson, if Alabama wins a national title with the staff, Kevin Wilson should take credit for helping build Alabama into a national title winner.
I think this could be a thing that we could do in the North, which is which Southern program should we send a rock to? So I'm going to check on Mike. Maybe you can check on this. How much does it cost to ship like a 400-pound rock? We got to find the rock. Oh, well, and we'll do like a live video. We'll do a rock search for the Tide rock. Oh, I'm so excited. So it is just weird. And I do think we could do something in the offseason because you're looking for offseason content.
Mhm.
We have so many ideas. We're fine. Name the 2024 Northern staff that a Southern team could steal whole hog
I
in,
mean, I know the answer to
in
that.
2029. Oh, what is it?
It's Oregon.
Oh, yeah.
Alabama already tried to do it.
But maybe maybe a little more under the radar.
Less
Right.
obvious. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Why Greg Schiano will be the next
Tennessee.
Oklahoma coach.
Tennessee.
They already tried.
Bring it home.
That's the thing. For real, everybody thinks the South is better at football. It's just warmer, and that lures down warmth, and money lures down the best Northern people.
Mhm.
So you know what we got to do? Get them to stay. Tell them no. That's the other thing. We got to get all the Northern coaches on and have them take a pledge. I will not take a job in the South. I'm probably going to move to Florida in like 2 years, but anyway, I will not take a job in the South. The pledge. But congratulations, I did the strength coach. What a bow on top of that story.
First domino. Yeah.
I'm excited for them. We'll also find out if we have Alabama in the playoff. So good luck to everybody in Alabama. Washington, meanwhile, took the Arizona coach, Jedd Fisch, who had a great year this year.
Mhm.
Surprising year. Northern roots, once upon a time, was at Michigan. What do you think of the hire? What do you think of what Washington did once Kalen Bohr decides to go? And one of the things included was not promoting offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb, who then is going to Alabama with Kalen DeBoer. Get Jedd Fisch, who has some head coaching experience.
Yeah, I know. I'm a little lukewarm on it, if I'm being honest. Like, Jedd Fisch did a tremendous job this year at Arizona. I think a lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of it was fueled by how good that defense was. And he's not bringing that coordinator with him to Washington. That coordinator got hired by Texas, I believe. So I don't know. Jedd Fisch's like propensity for bouncing around a lot makes me nervous if I'm hiring him. Like, if I'm Washington and Jedd Fisch somehow finds a way to have some early success at Washington, is he going to try to jump at the next thing like immediately? And then Washington is kind of left scrambling again. Like that would make me a little nervous. But I think he is a decent head coach. I think he is probably the kind of head coach that a program like Washington needs, which is a guy who embraces finding the under-recruited player, embraces development, is not necessarily a guy who's going to go try to build the whole thing out of 5 stars, because I don't think that's the way to live at Washington. So like, I certainly think it can work, and he's got enough, West Coast experience that I think that'll help him there. It felt a little rushed to me, but I also think that every coaching search now is rushed because teams are terrified of their rosters falling apart. So they kind of just hire the first person that pops in their mind. And Jedd Fisch is certainly a good person to have, if you're not going to have a prolonged coaching search. Like, he's a fine candidate. So I think he can do well there. I'm just a little like lukewarm on it.
And then your roster falls apart anyway. Like it did. Like the guy, really did. Like it does. It fell apart at Bama and it fell apart at Washington. So like the idea of, if once upon a time that was a motivation, with the idea that every time there's a coaching change, a head coaching change now, that the portal window reopens for all those players for the next month, you just can't take it into consideration. You just have to accept the fact that there's probably going to be a lot of guys leaving. I think you accept the patch it together year in year one, and you're hiring for the long term. You really shouldn't rush it just to try to, our starting left guard is on the fence, but if we hurry up and hire a coach, maybe we'll keep him. It's just not a way to live. I actually think I like the Jedd Fisch hire at Washington more than I like the Kalen DeBoer hire at Alabama.
Interesting.
So
what's that?
I do think that there's potentially a cultural fit that does not exist for Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, and is, son of the North, Nick Saban, didn't go from Michigan State to Alabama. Like, Alabama is like that's big time, right? And that's as big and as Southern as it gets. And so Nick Saban went to LSU, and then he won the national title at LSU. Then he went to the NFL. Then he went to Alabama. So like straight from practically Canada with no Southern roots to Bama. Like Kalen DeBoer to Tennessee, okay. Kalen DeBoer to almost anybody other than Bama. Kalen DeBoer to Florida, great, right? If you're just going to throw money at him. Now, maybe, I'm not saying they would have left for that, I do really think there's a cultural thing here. I wonder about that Saban was a defense first coach, and now you're going to come down there and you're going to maybe try to throw it around. And I also think, some coaches are more like underdog coaches. And I think that they are more, they're just better at elevating a team from tier 3 to tier 2 or tier 2 to tier 1. But I don't know that that makes them a tier 1 coach, an expectation coach.
Mhm.
So sometimes, I mean, we've seen this a lot. You have underdog offenses and the big dogs steal those offenses. But Washington, for as good, Washington's not an underdog program, but Kalen, in this situation, they're a tier 2 program that had a tier 1 season. I don't know that that means you're the best fit for a tier 1 program. I think Dan Lanning would have made more sense there. So I just think how you win, there's not the kind of recruiting background here. And if you're going to go chuck it around there, like, I don't know. I have a lot of questions. It's not where I would have gone if I was Alabama. It feels a little, and he's our coach of the North.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. I doubt Kalen DeBoer 0% at Washington. I doubt him at Alabama quite a bit. I don't know that it's dissimilar from Rich Rodriguez going from West Virginia to Michigan. And Rich Rodriguez was as good of a coach as anybody in the country at West Virginia. And he was never a fit with that offense, with that style, with no roots in the North. He was never, West Virginia's a Northern team. He was never that fit at Michigan. And if you're going to ask me a comparison, that's where I am right now. Go prove us wrong. I mean, we won't care because we don't care about the South. And now our coach in the North can cram it. But that's where I am here. Whereas Jedd Fisch, it's like, hey, man, Jedd Fisch took Noah Fafita as a young quarterback, and they played with anybody in a great conference this year. Let's go do that. Okay. I think that makes more sense.
I agree with you on that. I think maybe part of the reason why I'm not quite as high on the Jedd Fisch thing is, and it's probably me needing to recalibrate like expectations, but anymore when a coach makes a move, the first question you ask is, who's coming with them? And when Jedd Fisch goes to Washington, then like Noah Fafita doesn't go with him, or who's the receiver, Tetairoa McMillan, like doesn't go with him. Like you expect that, and then when it doesn't happen, I think you start to question a little bit. Like, okay, like what exactly is this guy about? So it doesn't mean that Jedd Fisch won't be successful there, but that was like a red flag's too strong. But it was like a thing that I took note of, that like oftentimes when coaches go to new places, especially when it's considered a quote unquote step up, their best players come with them, and that did not happen here. I guess there's still a chance for it to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. And now Washington is left with no scholarship quarterbacks on its roster, so there's a mighty big rebuild there for Jedd Fisch to go through.
Yeah, Washington's in a tough spot. It's one of these things. Like it's hard, just reading everybody on social media, all the Washington people who care about that program so much, and just a shock to the system. Obviously, the timeline of what happened. But I think you should be proud. Like, you should be proud that Alabama stole your guy. And I don't know. I just think what Kalen DeBoer did, Jedd Fisch can do. Now, there's some, you got to get Roma. All you got to do is find Michael Penix, Roma Dunze, and you're good to go. Braylon Trice. Oh, just going to get the. But I think it can be done. They got to find a quarterback. Tough spot. Will Rogers, who is going to come from Mississippi State in the transfer portal, then re-enters the transfer portal and says, no, I'm not going to do it after Kalen DeBoer leaves. Austin Mack, who had been the early enrolled freshman that they were counting on as the quarterback of the future, he's in the transfer portal. Demarcus Davis, who's like their new recruit, he's not going to be ready to play in year one. And Fafita didn't come. So like, I'll be curious where they are in another couple months, maybe after spring football, like where they are with the quarterback situation. Can Jedd Fisch pull somebody else, like a kind of big time dude out of nowhere, and say, like, this is a great place to come play quarterback? But it is a tough spot right now. And the other thing in this that's interesting is, if you would think that maybe Jedd Fisch is not a long timer, obviously a lot of people think if Jonathan Smith had not taken the Michigan State job, this might have been Jonathan Smith, the Oregon State coach who had played quarterback at Oregon State. But before he was the Oregon State head coach, he was the offensive coordinator at Washington. And again, cultural fit there. Jonathan Smith, it's like, hey, man, my school's left without a conference. What am I doing here? He takes a Big Ten job, not thinking that Washington was going to open anytime soon. And now probably it turns out Jonathan Smith is the ideal Washington head coach. So if Jedd Fisch in 3 years is gone, then and Jonathan Smith is pretty good at Michigan State, which we think he will be. Then I think Jonathan Smith's probably the new Washington coach then.
Yeah, I just worry about like if Billy Napier gets fired this year, that Jedd Fisch is just going to go to Florida.
Yeah,
like that's what worries me about him,
because
because
a Willie Taggart situation.
Yes,
Oregon,
and it's not, and wouldn't necessarily be. I don't think the success or failures of this year would even impact that. Like, I think that Jedd Fisch is a guy that Florida would want to hire based off mostly what he's done in Arizona if that job comes open, and I think that job will come open. And I'd be nervous about having to go find a new coach again next year if I were Washington.
I, Jedd Fisch, being of sound northern mind and heart and soul, do solemnly swear to not take a southern job in the next 3 years and abandon my new northern friends. I swear this on the KOTN sword. Then we slice his hand open. He bleeds everywhere, and we're good.
Yeah. Can we get him to burn his Florida degree when he does that?
I hereby revoke all previous. Okay, when we come back, it's time for the 12-team playoff prediction. We'll do it next on Kings of the North. So we did find out that our producer, Mike Urostowski, checked, and shipping a 400-pound rock would cost about $250, which we think is worth it. So now we just have to buy the rock or like chisel the rock out of something, right?
Yeah, we should do it that way, I think.
Yeah. Do you have a chisel?
I can buy one. You can rent one probably at Home Depot. Yeah.
Then we have to paint a slogan and logo on it. You just thought maybe the North remembers. It's just nice and to the point.
Yeah, and it's ominous too.
Yeah. KOTN.
Yeah.
And then we'll send it down there, and we'll just tell them to put it right next to the Saban statue. All right, so here's your rock.
Next to the oatmeal and cream pies and the Coke bottles they put there because they were acting like he died.
Just put it right on the cream pies. Just smash cream pies with our 400-pound Northern rock. All right, so we're going to talk about who our brackets are. And as this works right now, the top 4 seeds are the best 4 conference champs. So this exercise of making the top 4 seeds, the champs of the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Big 12, was a little bit of a shock to the system, was it not, Landis? Because when you think about a bracket, it's like, are these really the 4 best teams? But it's the rules. It's the rules.
For now, yeah, we'll see after a couple of years of this if people still feel that. Well, I do like rewarding teams for winning their conference championships. If we're going to continue playing the conference championship games, which I personally don't think we should, but if we are going to continue playing them, then you should reward teams for winning them. So I don't mind that, but it creates a weird looking bracket.
All right, you're making fun of my bracket. Put up my bracket. My bracket is weird.
Yours is insane. Yeah, yours is insane.
All right, here's my bracket. My top 4 seeds for the 2024 college football playoff, the inaugural 12-team playoff. I have number 1 seed Oregon, the champ of the Big Ten. Number 2 seed Georgia, the champ of the SEC. Number 3 seed Utah, the champion of the Big 12. And number 4 seed North Carolina State, the champion of the ACC. And the reason this happened is, have you looked at the ACC? Yeah. Have you looked at the ACC? You know who I was tempted to put here? Long live the North? Syracuse. So I backed off my initial instinct. Grayson McCall, the longtime Coastal Carolina quarterback, is going to go be the quarterback at NC State. We're going to talk on this show and continuing in the offseason about returning starting quarterbacks. That's why I did this, right? That's an answer to me. So, like, can Grayson McCall, now it's year 1, it's not year 2 like Penix was, like Michael Penix was, but we're talking about a guy making a jump up and then like leading a team as a transfer quarterback. That's what interested me about North Carolina State here. And I just did not find anything particularly compelling about Clemson, about Florida State with all the guys they're going to lose, about like, I don't even know. It's Virginia Tech, North Carolina. Like it's hard. If Clemson's not back and if Florida State loses all this talent and doesn't replace it in the same way, and by the way, Florida State's quarterback situation is not going to be great. The ACC gets thin quick, so long live the Wolfpack.
one bid league, I think, right? I don't. We
Ooh,
can, yeah,
half a bid league, but
half
yeah.
a bid league. Like like you got to put them in their league. Unfortunately, so no, I felt the same way when I was going through that. I didn't pick NC State. We can go through my four here in a second, but um, yeah, I considered them. Like I don't know. I think there's probably only three teams in the ACC that you probably can consider as potential champions, and NC State I do believe is one of them. I went a different direction with mine. I did take Florida State in my top four as the ACC champ, and I would probably agree with you that I'd rather have Grayson McCall as my 1 year transfer quarterback than DJ Uiagalelei, who Florida State is going to have coming over from Oregon State and now playing for his third team. But I also thought DJ was better at Oregon State than he was at Clemson, and I think he could be perhaps even a little bit better at Florida State than he was at Oregon State. And they're trying to do it again with transfers, which I'm not a huge believer in, so I'm not going to like bang the table for Florida State, and I can see myself changing this pick a couple of times as we go through this. But right now, I have them projected for me to win the ACC and be the 3 seed. I have Ohio State as the Big Ten champ instead of Oregon, which you have Georgia as the SEC champ as the top seed, and then I have Utah actually winning the Big 12, and I was rather surprised that you did not.
No, I did.
You did? Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
you did. I'm sorry.
I have Utah as my 3 seed.
You have Utah as your 3 seed. Yeah, I don't. The Big 12 is interesting to me because I think there's at least 4 teams, and I can convince myself that there's like 5 or 6 teams that can win that league. And I kind of just went off of like who plays the least number of those teams, and Utah, I think only ends up playing 2 of them. So they actually got a pretty favorable schedule with everything they have coming back. If Jed Fish had stayed at Arizona, I probably would have picked Arizona to win the Big 12, but with him gone, and the San Jose State coach coming in there, I'm pretty bullish on Utah's ability to win that league, even though they have some holes to fill with some of the stuff they lost at like receiver and running back, and they don't have Jonah Ellis and need to address some stuff in the secondary too. Like they're not bringing everybody back, but they're bringing enough back that I think they are my favorite right now to win that league.
I'm gonna blow your mind when we get to my 12-team bracket, and I have 2 Big 12 teams in. So
I thought about it.
Yeah. So you have Georgia as the 1 seed, Ohio State as the 2, Florida State as the 3, and Utah as the 4. Before we get to our 12, as long as the sport exists in this way, and the automatic bids are going to the 4 conference champs, the 5 seed and the 6 seed every year are going to be, quote, better and definitely favored against the 3 seed and the 4 seed every year. Because the 5 seed and the 6 seed are going to be the second best team in the Big Ten and the second best team in the SEC. And they are going to be better than the ACC and Big 12 champs a lot of the time. And at some point, as those second best teams in gigantic conferences filled with historic blue bloods and gigantic revenue programs that are seeking to compete at the highest level, they're going to get sick of not having a bye and wondering why in the heck NC State gets to sit around at home. Now you get to host a game. You host 5-12, you host 6-11, but it's an extra game. It's more wear and tear. It's less prep. You're going to play, if you're a northern team hosting that game, you have to play in the cold. I don't know how long that lasts, and I don't know every detail of the TV negotiations and everything in the contract, but it was a 12-year deal that they signed initially with the TV contract. We're switching to 12-team playoff for years 11 and 12 of that contract. I would give this format 2 years. Yeah. And then I think by the time we get to whatever that new world is on the new contract, I don't think the SEC and Big Ten will stand by and give buys to the Big 12 and the ACC. And maybe the answer to that is no buys, 16-team playoff.
Maybe. Potentially. I think it's more likely that it'll just be 4 at-large bids, and you
just rank the 12 best teams and the top 4.
Just go by pure ranking, because there's going to be.
But you have to get in, like the Big 12. It'll still be conference champs getting in, just not having the top 4 seeds locked down.
Just not having a 4-loss ACC champion being ranked ahead of a the one-loss team that finished second in the Big Ten,
Right.
which is like, I don't know, gonna happen in the next 2 years.
I mean, you're going to have situations where, like, yeah, potentially you think about a team like Georgia this year, right? Undefeated regular season, you lose in the conference championship game. You're not the conference champ. You can't be one of the top 4 seeds. So now you're the 5 seed or the 6 seed. But like you said, you're staring up at NC State and going like, what?
Yeah,
So
well, I mean, it's not like, I don't know. It happens in the NFL, right? The Eagles were 2 games better than the Bucks, and they had to go play the Bucks on the road because the Bucks won their division.
So this was, I was going to say, you don't have to talk about the Birds. You don't have to do that to yourself. But actually,
No,
that
it's
was
okay.
backhanded trying to sue. You were complaining there. The Eagles were better than the Bucks, but the Eagles had to go on the road to Tampa because of the stupid NFL rules.
Clearly, they weren't better than the Bucks. I wasn't saying that. I guess I was saying that perhaps there's more of an appetite for that than I am giving credit, or it's not that much of a reach to think that teams could be comfortable with that because it does happen in other sports.
It does, and that's the, there are times when I think college football is terrible at that. College football is like, how dare? It's like, listen, sports split up, and then it's like win your group, and then you advance, and you split up in groups. That's how sports do it. The problem is that, like, college football is broken up by how popular you are to watch on TV and how much money you make, and so it's not like the Bucks aren't trying to get in to the NFC East and being told no because they don't draw enough TV eyeballs, and then having to be in this lesser conference and then getting the bye, right? Which is like NC State would kill to be in the Big Ten or the SEC. Those conferences don't want them, but yet for the moment, they have to sit back and watch them get a bye because they won their lesser, dying, splintering, suing each other conference. Please take us. No. We're the 4 seed. Right? It's hard to stomach. That's the part that is different.
What do you think? So, like, Florida State is like suing its own conference to get out of it, because it wants to join a league that makes more money. But like next year, or this coming season, when Florida State is like 9-3 and wins the ACC and then gets the 3 seed by like just because of these rules that are in place, you think they might do a double take? Like, maybe this isn't so bad. Like, what's more important to us? Having an easier path to a bye or like an extra $20 million every year?
There are programs that are going to have to come to grips with being the happiest, richest 7-5 team in the country. And they're going to have to decide if that's what they want. Like, what have we done? Because the result is great games. The result is like Oklahoma, Georgia, and Texas, Alabama, and all these new things, Oregon, Ohio State. And then it's like, oh my God, why?
Yeah.
Give me more Rutgers and Vanderbilt games. What have we done? Because you've established this threshold of this is what success is, and success is double-digit wins, and success is playing games that matter at the end of the year. But when you're playing games that matter the whole year, and you're 2-3 in the middle of October, cashing checks, getting on TV, somebody's got to lose those games, man. And I don't think people realize that.
Yeah.
I don't know if USC and Oklahoma and Tennessee and Penn State are going to be happy at 7-5. Rich? Yes. Happy? I don't know.
I don't think so.
So we have to define success, because it's like, and that I'm not saying they're going to be bad. They might be very good 7-5 teams. Because if you're 7-5 and your 5 losses are to Texas, Alabama, Georgia, and LSU, great. I'm like, what are you going to do? You're not mad about any of those losses. There's just so many of them. What happened?
What if you're like, let's say that these rules don't change and like the college football powers just decide like conference championships are too important TV revenue. We're never getting rid of them. And since we have them, this is going to be the reward. You win your conference, you're going to get a bye. You win a power conference, you're going to get a bye. Would like a team like Rutgers, like, oh, we're going to leave the Big Ten. We're going to give up $30 million in revenue to go to the ACC because we think we actually stand a chance to win that league like once every decade and actually get into the playoff.
Listen, man, when Greg Schiano watches this show and sees NC State in the 4 line, he's going to be like, I think we're better than NC State. Can we get in the ACC tomorrow?
Yeah.
right? And so that's the thing. You got to create this world, and then, this is why when you go through exercises like this, I just think, how do we get to anything other than it's all Big Ten and it's all SEC? And
Yeah.
then, or you're not in, or you're in something else. You're in a different bracket. And that, like, the 12 or 14 or 16 team playoff is just the SEC. You do your thing with your 20 teams, and the Big Ten will do its thing with its 20 teams, and then send us your best 8 at the end of the year. And we'll pair them up across from each other, and we'll do this thing.
Yeah.
Let's go. And then Florida State and North Carolina and Virginia Tech or whatever, Clemson, anybody else that matters, they're in one of those two conferences. And then everything else is something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that is eventually what it will be. Yeah.
But when you do this, nothing, for real. The Eagles losing 7 of their last 8 games and seeing North Carolina State as a 4 seed in the 12-team playoff were the two most shocking things that happened to you in the last month, right? It shook you to your core.
It did. It was, and I think it's fun, but it requires some recalibration of the mind to get used to.
Right. And is it fun to Georgia? Is it fun?
I don't care to Georgia.
But is it fun to Ohio State, and is it fun to Michigan and Penn State and Oregon and Washington and USC?
Yeah.
Ryan Day, did you hear? NC State's a 4 seed. Congratulations to those guys. All right, let's
have fun playing your 5-12 game and minus 15-degree wind chill while NC State's cooling. Yeah.
So let's pull it up. Let's pull up my 12-team bracket and my 5-12 game, which will feature in 2024. The mighty Ohio State Buckeyes hosting the Fresno State Bulldogs, the champions of the Mountain West, behind veteran quarterback Mikey Keene. Get fired up for that. But listen, I'm telling, the rest of it is great. I have Ohio State as the 5 seed, Texas as the 6, Penn State as the 7, Tennessee as the 8, Notre Dame as the 9, Oklahoma as the 10, and West Virginia as the 11, the second team out of the Big 12, which, by the way, means the Penn State, West Virginia opener on the opening weekend, banger. We maybe have to go to that, man. This is like a world where Penn State's a playoff team out of the Big 10, and West Virginia has a non-conference win over them, and then does well in the Big 12. And it's like, what are we doing? How do we leave out West Virginia? Fresno State is my 12. So then my first round games are 5-12, Ohio State hosting Fresno State, 6-11, Texas hosting West Virginia, 7-10, Penn State hosting Oklahoma, and 8-9, Tennessee hosting Notre Dame. God, it's just beautiful.
It's great. I love
Fresno State, Ohio State's a little crazy, but that's how it's always going to be with the 12 seed.
Yeah.
The rest of it just makes me tingle.
I even like an Ohio State Fresno State, because it's you're never going to see that matchup otherwise, because that's the kind of group of 5 team that a Power 5 team would never schedule.
Oh, but actually, do you know who Fresno State opens with in 2024?
Oregon.
At national champion Michigan.
Oh, Michigan.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Michigan's like Michigan was like, we didn't really play anybody last year. We won the national championship, and they opened with like Fresno State and Texas, and then they play like everybody new in the Big Ten too. Michigan's schedule is bonkers. So, by the way, we'll just get to yours right now, but no Michigan in my bracket, no Alabama in my bracket.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that a little bit more. Let's just go ahead and do your reveal, Landis.
Sure. I do have Michigan in mind, but my 5 is Notre Dame, and we should probably talk about me being way too high on that team at the moment, because I don't think they're going to lose this year.
You dislike Sam Hartman so much. You're like, thank God they got rid of that guy. They're running the table.
Yeah. So I have Notre Dame as the 5, Oregon as the 6, Texas as the 7, Michigan as the 8, Ole Miss as the 9, Penn State as the 10, Missouri as the 11, and Boise State as the 12 is my G5 representative. So those pairings are Notre Dame hosting Boise State in the 5-12 game, Oregon hosting Missouri in the 6-11 game, Texas hosting Penn State in the 7-10 game, and Michigan hosting Ole Miss in the 8-9 game.
So we have 7 of our 12 teams are the same. We have Oregon, Georgia, Utah, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, and Notre Dame that we agree on. The Oregon-Ohio State thing, when I said one of the things that could happen is I could see teams playing 3 times, Ohio State goes to Oregon. This scenario that I've created here, I guess, is Oregon beating Ohio State in the Big Ten title game, and then Ohio State as a 5 seed up against NC State in the quarters. Sure feels like we're winding up with a semifinal of number 1 Oregon versus number 5 Ohio State for the triplicate for the third time. Does that make your brain explode, or do you want to bring that?
I don't like teams playing 3 times, which is part of the reason why I think we need to get rid of conference championship games. And I would, at some point, it would become unavoidable, right? You can't eliminate the possibility entirely, but I do wonder. I think I said this earlier this year, like how much finagling of the bracket there might be to avoid rematches early in the playoff. I think we were talking about that because there was a chance that, like, if the 12-team playoff existed this year, like Ohio State would have played Penn State immediately, and I think Georgia would have played Ole Miss right away again immediately. I don't love that. I know the NCAA basketball tournament goes out of its way to avoid rematches, at least in the first round. I would hope that the football powers do the same thing if they can, if it makes sense, and then maybe try to structure the bracket in a way that tries to avoid them perhaps until you get to a national championship. I know that wouldn't be possible every year depending on who makes the field, but no, I don't like a three-peat of anyone versus anyone.
How much do you like the rest of this bracket, though? I mean, like when you think about, for instance, that you have a Texas Penn State game, I have an Oklahoma Penn State game. When you think about that, you have a Missouri Oregon game, and I have a Texas West Virginia game. Like, we are just getting Tennessee Notre Dame or Michigan Ole Miss. All these games. This is what we're talking about. This is what we are adding. These are the games that were previously played in the New Year's Six bowls. Hey, it's Missouri Ohio State, but like, does anybody care that much? Right? And hey, it's Ole Miss Penn State, but does anybody care that much? We're getting versions of those games where everybody cares as much as they have ever cared about anything. I think this is the next step toward greatness for this sport. Those 4 first round games, where you're getting these cross-country games that matter the most, that nobody's going to opt out of, and they're going to be on campus sites. Notre Dame at Tennessee. Are you kidding me? Penn State at Texas. Are you kidding me? Like, these opportunities, Bill, are going to be something that we've never experienced. And again, you've got to make your own bracket so you can feel the excitement start to build up, because brackets make life real. I love brackets. My God.
Brackets
you ever go, whenever there's a major tennis tournament on, I just did it with the Australian Open. I just want to go online and see the bracket, so I can be like, oh, okay, they're in the round of 64. But if this guy wins and this guy wins, or this woman beats this woman, then in the round of 16, they're going to do this. Brackets I would bracket everything if I could. But like this bracket, here's the challenge I have for our viewers and listeners here on KOTN. Make your bracket, write it down on a little piece of paper, laminate it, and then do you have the thing on the back of your cell phone where you have like the little thing that you stick to your cell phone so you can carry cards and stuff in it on the back of that?
Not anymore, because I was terrified of losing my phone, my ID, and my credit card all at once, but I used to have it.
Yeah. My daughter has that. I don't have that either, but I have a wallet. So slide it in the back of your cell phone, put it in your wallet, put it in your purse, put it in the glove box of your car, put it maybe in a lanyard that you wear around your neck every day from now until we get the actual release of the 12-team bracket. Pick your bracket and then make it part of your daily existence when you're down, when you're standing in line at Starbucks, right? When you're pumping gas. Don't look at it while you're driving. Just pull out your bracket and just think about, man, that Penn State game at Texas is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah. Because I think, like, I've never bought into the idea that this was going to water down the regular season. I think it increases the stakes in the regular season, because teams are playing for seeding. Teams are playing for these first round buys that we're talking about, positioning themselves to get to the conference championship game to do so. So like, I've never been fearful of that. And I think all this does is amplify the postseason, like just makes it all like all the more better. Like it's been a bit of a bummer, and I'm not saying anything, pejorative about anybody who's made this decision, but like I get bummed out when I see like really intriguing matchups in the postseason just get kind of wiped out by guys not playing because the games don't have any stakes. Like the Oregon State Notre Dame bowl game this year is a perfect example of that. How excited were we for that matchup when it first came out, and then like 4 days later, it wasn't even worth talking about because neither one of those teams had their best players playing. Now we get those matchups with the best players playing. Because the other thing I'm not fearful of, which we talked about before, is guys opting out of playoff games. I don't think it's going to happen, or at least not on the scale that takes all the meaning out of these games. Maybe here and there, once or twice every couple of years, it might happen, but not on a large enough scale. I think that'd be incredibly impactful. So I'm really looking forward to it, and like gaming this out and putting these matchups together, and like thinking about who's hosting who and all. Like, it's incredible. Like, I think it's going to be so much fun.
The thing, and this is like another is a separate show, and I would like to dive into it deeper at some point as well. But this allows teams to lose, and I think people have a misperception about how that affects how you think about a game going in. Because, and again, just by, I don't know if it's luck or just serendipity. When we talk, there's some of the, I have North Carolina State and Tennessee in my playoff bracket. They play each other the second week of the season on September 7th. Penn State and West Virginia are both in my bracket. They play each other in the regular season, right? Tennessee has North Carolina State and Georgia and Alabama on its schedule this year, and Oklahoma. Like, all these bangers. But like, when Tennessee and Oklahoma play each other, it is really going to matter, because I think they're both going to be good, and they're both in my bracket. But the thing I think we have latched on too much in college football, and I think it will be easy to let go, is we love the idea of a loss ruining a team's season. We revel in it. We think that makes it more fun. Oh, how dare you lose? Your season is ruined. Even though it doesn't exist in any other sport, anywhere, where one loss kills you. We think that's what makes college football great. We think that's why it has the best regular season. That's wrong. That's not what it is. It's the great matchups. It's the rivalries. It's high-level competition and great wins. It is not ruinous, devastating losses. That's not why you love this sport. Now, when you drop it on your rival, and this is just one of these things, too many people live this way. If when something happens, your joy comes from someone else's misery, or your ability to rub somebody's face in it, rather than just celebrating and enjoying the thing for itself, then I don't know what to tell you. If your favorite thing of winning is somebody else losing, then maybe you won't like this. If you just enjoy victory and celebrating with your team and your friends and your family, it doesn't matter if the losing team still has a chance. So let's play great games. Let's play games where we think about, oh, this is going to affect the seeding. And by the way, you lose enough of them, you're still out. Yeah. Tennessee's got Oklahoma, North Carolina State. Let's see, Alabama and Georgia. Okay. Tennessee has 4 bangers this year. They can't go 0-4, but if they go 2-2, they're in a good place. So guess what? All 4 of those games matter. But if they lose one, it takes away wiggle room, but it doesn't kill them. I love that. So if you're not embracing the 12-team playoff, it's because you like somebody else losing too much. So I think this is all good. And it is weird, man. Texas and Michigan are your 7 seed and 8 seed. They play in September.
Week 2, right? Yeah.
It doesn't render that game meaningless. It's like, let's do this. We think they're both great. And then again, long-term, what we hope it does is encourage these games to continue to be played, because you can lose and live. You're not dead. But bring me Texas, Michigan. I don't care if the loser of that game still has a good year and still makes the playoff. I mean, I'm excited about it.
No, I am too, because it's not, it's maybe that game doesn't go a whole lot, I guess, in determining who will get a conference championship and a potential bye, but or idle week, I guess. No, right. It is a bye in this. It is a bye in this sense, but it can determine a home field. It can determine whether or not Michigan has to go play somewhere in the SEC in the first round in the playoff, or if it gets to host an SEC team, which I think we all agree is probably more of an advantage for the northern teams and perhaps it is for the southern teams playing at that time of year. So it still matters. It matters for different reasons. It matters for reasons that we haven't ever considered before in college football, and that will require a bit of change of perspective on things. But it's not like there's still meaning in them, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You have to find it a little bit, but and if you think there's not meaning in it, then I don't know, like you said, you just want to revel in someone else's misery than your own success rather than your own success.
And it's hard because I love reveling in misery as much as anybody.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, just not when it comes to college football matchups. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 2 more things I want to talk about here. And it relates to the North and it relates to Michigan. Okay, so we're throwing out the group of 5 team, although the quarterback play we think still doesn't matter to them. Mikey Keene's a veteran guy at Fresno State, and I guess you're relying on Malachi Nelson, the USC transfer, to get it going at Boise State from the jump, right?
Yeah, and they have Ashton Jeanty back too, who I think is a really good player, one of the best running backs in the country. Yeah.
So looking at the 11 other teams that'll be coming from the Power 4 conferences, 9 of my 11 teams and 9 of your 11 teams have experienced starting quarterbacks locked in right now.
Mm-hmm.
I have 5 teams that are returning their quarterback, 4 teams that are bringing in an experienced transfer quarterback. You have 6 teams that are returning their quarterback and 3 teams that are bringing in an experienced transfer quarterback. And let's just run through those teams very quickly, and then we can sort of comment generally on our belief of these teams and their quarterback play. So, Oregon, they're bringing in Dylan Gabriel as a transfer from Oklahoma, very experienced quarterback. Georgia, bringing back Carson Beck as a returning starting quarterback. Ohio State, bringing in Will Howard from Kansas State as an experienced starting quarterback. Utah, Cam Rising was hurt all this year and did not play, but he will be healthy again as a 7th-year college football player, super experienced. He'll be Utah's quarterback in 2024. NC State, as we mentioned, the transfer of Grayson McCall, a 6th-year guy, very veteran starting quarterback at Coastal Carolina. Notre Dame, transfer of Riley Leonard from Duke, not their own guy, but a veteran starting quarterback. Texas, we both have Texas in. Quinn Ewers coming back to be a 3rd-year starter at Texas. We both have Penn State in. Drew Aller coming back to be a 2nd-year starter at Penn State. Ole Miss, who I did not put in, and we can have a longer Ole Miss conversation, but we won't because we're Kings of the North. Jackson Dart, very veteran starting quarterback coming back at that school. West Virginia, Garrett Green coming back to West Virginia as a starting quarterback. Mizzou, Brady Cook coming back as a starting quarterback at Missouri. I looked at Missouri pretty hard as well. I didn't go Ole Miss because they're so heavy in the portal. I don't know that you can build a whole team out of the portal. And the fact that they went so heavy in the portal, they lost their best offensive player to Ohio State, has me on alert for them to be a cautionary tale this year. But the quarterback's good enough, right? And I understand why you have them in there. I think they're a very reasonable pick.
Yeah, I think Jackson Dart's good. I think everyone liked their schedule as being favorable because they didn't have to play Alabama. And now it's like, I don't know, is playing Alabama the worst thing in the world this year? Probably not. But I have them in now. This is all subject to change. They're a little bit of a darling, I think, because of what they did in the portal. But I have similar fears about building so much through the portal that you do. I have the same concerns about Florida State as well. But I think both of them are talented enough to be playoff teams.
So I then have my 2 other teams. So 9 of my teams have clear veteran starting quarterbacks, their own or from the portal. My 2 that don't have that are Tennessee and Oklahoma, who will start as sophomores, probably the 2 best quarterbacks from that recruiting class in 2023 who will play this year. Because Arch Manning was number 1 in that class. He's blocked by Quinn Ewers at Texas. Nico Iamaleava played the bowl game for Tennessee and took Iowa's defense apart. Joe Milton is moving on. He's done there. It's Nico time. And Dylan Gabriel transferred out of Oklahoma in part because Jackson Arnold is ready to go. So that's why I liked my list. I've got 9 veteran quarterbacks and like the 2 best young dudes. So a couple years ago, we were in a situation where Clemson was playing DJ Uiagalelei in year 2, Bryce Young was playing in year 2 at Alabama, and CJ Stroud was playing in year 2 at Ohio State. I'm looking at Iamaleava and Arnold in a similar way right here, which is why I think Oklahoma and Tennessee can make that jump, even though they don't have veterans at quarterback.
By all that, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Okay, so then here are your 2 schools that you have in the playoff that would not qualify as having a veteran locked-in starting quarterback. One is Florida State that you have as the 3 seed winning the ACC. Jordan Travis moving on. Brock Glenn, Tate Rodemaker, who was the backup, also in the transfer portal. Brock Glenn is maybe there behind DJ Uiagalelei, but I mean, DJ qualifies as a veteran starter. I don't know why I'm apprehensive about that, but I'm not quite as confident as I am in some of the other situations, which is why I wanted to ask you about him. And then Michigan, we don't know who the quarterback is. Michigan is even far more up in the air than Florida State, because actually, I guess I marked it down wrong, actually. You have 10. DJ's a veteran starting quarterback. So 10 of your 11 have veteran starting quarterbacks. But do you have any concerns about DJ at Florida State? And then what do you think about the Michigan quarterback situation?
Well, I don't have a veteran starting quarterback with Boise either. If you want
to, I'm not counting the
G5. Yeah. So it had never when I was projecting Florida State, like it was always with DJ being the starter. Like I don't have much of a concern of him not being the starter there. Michigan for me at the moment is like more of a tip of a cap to the program than it is like me being super high on what they could be. Either defense is going to be really good, which is like the main reason that I'm comfortable putting them there. I have no idea what that offense is going to look like. They're losing a ton on offense. They're like bringing back Colston Loveland, Donovan Edwards, and Khalil Mullings, and like I don't know what else they're going to do. Like Alex Orji, I guess, is going to be their quarterback. Never seen him throw a football. I have no idea what it looks like. So I'm not going to pretend like I think Alex Orji is going to be awesome. But I think as long as, and maybe not, like I think Jim Harbaugh is going to go to the NFL too. I think as long as they promote Sherrone Moore to be that team's head coach, then that roster is not going to blow up on them, and they're still going to be a good team, and they're still going to be a competitive team and at the top of the Big Ten, and I think competing for that conference championship. So it's not a like emphatic Michigan is definitely making the playoff, but I also, I guess, didn't want to like blow them off just because they lost, basically their entire starting offense. I think they are built for sustainability, and I wanted to reflect that.
So I do think in this day and age, it is going to be harder. It's just going to be weird, man. The idea of just having like a great young quarterback who's your backup and then is going to be ready to go. Like we're talking about a world. Okay. So again, in the end, I kind of counted DJ wrong. You're 10 out of 11 veteran quarterback, guys who have started for a whole year. And I'm 9 out of 11. And if you don't have that, it's going to matter. We saw it last year. The season shook out exactly how everybody saw it. I was high on Florida State in the spring, in large part because of their veteran guys led by sixth-year quarterback Jordan Travis. I was high on Washington because of their veteran guys led by veteran quarterback Michael Penix Jr. High on Oregon, Bo Nix, same thing. High on Michigan because of J.J. McCarthy coming back as the starter. And then reasonable questions about Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama because they were all starting backups who had been groomed to be the next guy. And there's just so many schools that are they're letting somebody else do the development. And they're plugging and playing with all these guys. It's hard to live that way, man. Now, Georgia, year 2, Carson Beck in year 2. Okay, Georgia's good. But they didn't make the playoff last year, right? Jalen Milroe, I don't know. We don't have Bama in, but like if Jalen Milroe's going to be the guy, Ohio State wound up and having to go get a guy in the transfer portal. They stole somebody else's experience. I do think this is going to be a continuing thing where even at the very best schools, if you are cycling out of your veteran quarterback and playing the fairly young, highly recruited backup who's been waiting his turn, it's going to be a little iffier because we're talking 75% of the Power 5 is starting a quarterback with experience. Some of it's because Minnesota's starting the New Hampshire quarterback and, Central Florida's starting the Arkansas quarterback and all this kind of stuff, right? But that's how it works now. So I'm intrigued to have our further quarterback discussion, but I think this is the new norm where 75% of the Power 5 is going to be playing a veteran, either their own or somebody else's. And if you're not one of that 75%, if you're in the other quarter, it's an uphill climb a little bit.
Yeah, it is, but I don't know that I view it as much steeper of an uphill climb than a team that is bringing in like a 1-year transfer quarterback, even one that's experienced, right? It's like, I think Riley Leonard's going to be good at Notre Dame. He could be average. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like, who would you rather be? I guess like Notre Dame this year with Riley Leonard or like Georgia last year with Carson Beck. Like I think there's merits to both.
Yeah. It's a continuing conversation. It's not an answer. I mean, it takes away that floor. Like it takes away what happened with Alabama in the Texas game, where Jalen Milroe's just throwing picks all over the place and looks like a young quarterback. Right? It takes that away because a guy, okay, hasn't been in your system, but he's been through some battles, somebody else's battles, and so it doesn't mean you can't make the playoff because the whole point is you're going to be able to lose. I am intrigued by that. Numbers seem high to me. If you said more than 75% of the Power Five is going to be playing a veteran quarterback, their own or somebody else's, that's not how it used to be because you couldn't go get somebody else's veteran quarterback. But now that's the norm. I've got 20, I think, of the Power Five, 20 of the Power Five who are planning to play somebody else's veteran quarterback. That's crazy. It's practically a third of the Power Five. Like that's the plan. So here's the last thing I want to talk about before we get out of here with our 12-team bracket, not counting the Mountain West teams. The other 11 teams, you know what a breakdown is for both of us, North and South? 6 North, 6 North, 5 South. The North is here to stay, baby.
Not intentional. Maybe subconsciously, but not.
If it was intentional, I would have picked Syracuse to win the ACC.
Yeah, right.
This just happened.
Yeah.
So we agree on Oregon. We agree on Utah. We agree on Ohio State. We agree on Penn State. And we agree on Notre Dame. Those are 5 Northern teams that we agree will be in. Your 6th team is Michigan. My 6th team is West Virginia. But that's a pretty good, and I think like that's what we expect this to be, right?
Yeah.
This world, again, we have to remember Utah's a Northern team. We think Utah's going to be the best football program in the Big 12. And then when Notre Dame's up, and now you're adding Oregon and Washington to the Big 10, but like that's going to be and where you have 4 Big 10, I have 3. We each have 4 SEC. Notre Dame being in here takes a spot away from somebody. I think I've been in a world where the norm for both the Big 10 and the SEC should be 4 or 5. I'm only at 3 for the Big 10 now. But as you thought about the teams that were like capable of doing it, did you think there were a good group of Northern teams, a good group of Big 10 teams who were going to be in contention for this?
Actually, no. I think it ended up being a little lighter than maybe I would have guessed or assumed like a year or so ago. Like part of that is like now being uncertain of Washington. Because I think Washington would have been in this conversation for me if Kalen DeBoer was still there, and maybe if they were able to keep that roster together a little more than obviously Washington's been able to. And I think like eventually we're going to get to a place where Wisconsin feels like a reasonable team to consider, but I don't know that they're quite there yet. And perhaps even in Nebraska, who we've talked about as being a program on the rise, I think has an opportunity to build toward that, but I don't think they're nearly there yet either. So the Big 10 teams that I have I think are, in my mind right now, the only Big 10 teams I think could make it. And like USC, I guess, is one too, but they are a Big 10 team, but I tend to think of them as a Southern team. So it's like kind of a weird disconnect in my mind. So that's probably the one, I guess, that I don't have out of the Big 10 that I think could be, considered a reasonable candidate.
Penn State, West Virginia, man. I can't wait for that game. We're gonna have to do sooner than later. I think we're gonna have to do like 10 best Northern games in 2024 because we need to start talking about the opportunities that are available. When you talk about games like Wisconsin, Alabama, and Texas, Michigan, I actually think maybe we can do like the 10 best crossover games. Cause like when we were running through like the best win over the South, when we did our Northern KOTN awards for the end of the year, and there weren't a lot of nominees, it was clearly Michigan's semifinal win over Alabama. We have a potential for a lot more nominees this year, right? That there's going to be a little more crossover there. So anyway, 12-team playoff. I can't wait. I didn't used to want it, but I came around.
When did it switch for you?
Probably about halfway through the 4-team playoff. I went from I'd rather leave a good team out to I'd rather let a lesser team in. But how can we keep living in a world where like we're fighting over the 4th or 5th spot and we're trying to jam 5 conferences into 4 spots? And again, the idea that they finally killed a conference to get down to 4 major conferences right when they were expanding, it's like, that would almost make sense. Yeah. But again, for this to have happened and be like, oh, we're just sticking with 4. It's the 4 conference champs or whatever, right? Unless it's still, people would go nuts. Can you imagine if they were putting in NC State and like there wasn't a second SEC team at all? So it's time for this, and it's going to be good. And the sport has risen to the occasion. We've talked about that in a lot of ways. It's flattened out. The North has risen up, and you're going to like it, and we're going to like talking about it. And we're going to talk about it a lot. So we want to see, we'll save these graphics, and we want to see the evolution. I love evolution of thinking. Why did you think that then? Why don't you think it now? I think it's helpful in life to like, today it's January 18th, and today I think this. And then see on February 18th if you still think it.
Yeah. I think, do you feel like your 12-team field is going to change rather drastically? Or not drastically, but like significantly enough that it's like interesting discussion for the entire year?
So it depends. Like I have to really study Ole Miss's roster. I have to really think about Missouri, which I think is a great pick by you, and I'm very intrigued by. If Fran Brown comes on the show and brings the juice from Syracuse, I'm telling you, it is not going to take a lot for me to slide in Syracuse as the ACC champ. I'm warning you now. And then I'm curious, we have to think about like, is USC going to sort of revamp itself and compete again? I think there's probably like, again, for the 11 spots that are open for the power conference teams, there's probably a good, maybe like 20, I think, that are real contenders for those 11 spots. I don't think it's 45, but I also wanted to be on the lookout for like surprising teams. Like, who's your TCU? Who's the team that you don't see coming? Which is why I wanted to be open to a team like NC State potentially. So I'll be curious to see who that team could be in the Big Ten. But I certainly believe, like, get back to me in 2025 and year 3 of Luke Fickell and Phil Longo at Wisconsin, year 3 of Matt Rule, and year 2 of Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, year 2 of Jonathan Smith and Aiden Childs at Michigan State. Like, let's do. I agree with you. Like, not yet. The depth at the top of the Big Ten, it was sort of like, okay, it's Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and then Michigan. Like, those are the top 4. How many do you think are getting in? I don't know who the 5th best team in the Big Ten is going to be in a world where Washington lost its whole roster and its coach.
Right.
So, like, that could be a whole show. Who will be the 5th best team in the Big Ten? But I think, like, it's an interesting conversation because from a program perspective, there are going to be a lot of teams competing to be that. But I think they're still in 2024. Most of them are building toward it and not quite ready.
Yeah, I think that's true of the Big Ten. Like, I think, 2-3 years from now, the Big Ten, I think, could be positioned to have like 8 or 9 teams worth talking about when we're doing this stuff. And I also think the Big 12 is going to make things very interesting too, just because I think that's going to be a league with a lot of parity. And like I have Utah winning the Big 12 right now. If I have a different Big 12 champion every time we do this, I don't think I'd be surprised by that by the end of the year. Yeah. So we appreciate you guys being part of Kings of the North. Again, we're going to continue this kind of content going through the off season. We're hoping we're going to start running some guests through here. We are having continuing meetings about the future of this show. We have a lot of grand plans, and we could not be more excited about what's ahead. And we could not be more excited that you guys are here with us for the ride. For our great producer, Mike Urostowski, he makes us look good and sound good. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.